Hi, I'm so excited today to welcome Abbie Gatherum. She bridges the gap between the traditional side of writing with a master's in creative writing, editing, and publishing, and the modern hustle of TikTok with over 10,000 followers, which is built up in just over a year. Abbie works at writers' festivals on the side. She runs her own book bestie business, and she is a writer herself, focusing on the sad romance genre, which I can't wait to talk more about. But Abbie, can you tell me, because I know we have been talking about the weight of receiving an offer and then getting the contract. Where are you at with your agent?
Excitingly, I just read my literary agent agreement letter about 2 minutes before signing on to do this podcast. So I can,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. I can officially say I think that I have a literary agent for my book.
That's so exciting. And what serendipitous timing, but I also think what I've realized this year is the where my motto has been be bold. The more I'm putting myself out there and doing things like this, the more the universe is you know, nodding its head or taking pity, whichever it is. So but a huge congratulations. That's so exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think there's something in the positive mindset because I have been very much like manifesting, if you can say it that way. Um, just saying like it is happening, it's going to happen, it's happening soon, it's happening now. So I think it is a bit serendipitous that it's happening right before talking about my writing and my experience.
And I wanted to ask you because a lot of authors are expected these days to build their own platform or online presence. Yours has done spectacularly well with over 10,000 followers on TikTok. Can you tell me a little bit about how you went about building your following, how you thought about the angle or the hook that you were going to use?
Yeah, it's actually really funny because the last week or two, I feel like I've been going through a little bit of a confusing time of going, am I doing enough? Or, comparing myself to other people who are on TikTok or other social media platforms. And just thinking to myself, I don't even know what I'm doing, which is definitely not the case because, like you said, I have grown over 10,000 followers in a year. I think the biggest thing that I attribute my success to is just sort of showing up authentically. I am so passionate about writing and editing and just my experience with both of those fields from my master's degree, from my time working with literary festivals and interning at publishing houses. And I think I bring a lot of authentic experience and knowledge to my page. And I often will just sit down and film my writing or film myself talking about this really cool thing that I just remembered or just thought about. And it might just be as simple as some editing tips or I think recently I posted about getting back into writing after a break and just my sort of step by step on how I would do that. And I think people really enjoy seeing that because it just shows up as this normal person who is just writing a book and trying to sort of fumble her way forward and do it. But it is really fun. And I think there's so many ways you can tackle social media. You can go in with this real curated mindset and really try and sort of force it, but you can also just show up like a best friend, just talking about writing on the internet. And I think that that is where my success has been because I just go, like a best friend and just sort of put my phone down and talk.
It's amazing to hear you speak about still feeling vulnerable around, and how we're always, comparing ourselves to the next or people who have more followers or, for many people, you hitting 10,000 followers in a year would be the ultimate goal. So it's kind of nice and reassuring to hear that even people who've done really well will still feel that, and that bringing that authenticity makes it, you know, and all I'll ask, does that make it enjoyable for you, or do you feel like social media is a slog?
I love social media, so I definitely don't feel like a I definitely don't feel like it's a slog. I think sometimes I do get disheartened by it still because I might post something that I think is going to do really well and then it doesn't. And I'm just sitting there going, well, I followed all of the ABCs of how to go viral or what I need to put out there. But then on the other side of it, I sometimes will post something that is the most boring, random thing that I'm like, why am I even posting that? And it will go viral or I will get inquiries for my editing services or things like that through that. So it's really an interesting game of chance, I think. And I do think the most important thing is just to sort of show up and just do it. Even if you're embarrassed by it, even if you find that you're a bit nervous or you're not sure how it's going to go, sometimes videos will go viral months after you post them. You just never know with platforms like TikTok.
That's so interesting. And I mean, what is an example of something you thought was going to do really well, versus the thing that you just posted, and it did?
I remember last year when um okay. An example of it going really well for me was this random video I posted last year when I think it was around the time that the US was getting banned from TikTok, which
Mm.
obviously never ended up happening. And I just posted this really random video to, I think it was the Lion King soundtrack of like the help, is anyone out there? And it went absolutely bonkers because it was basically me saying like, "Oh, Australians are now going, what do we do here? How do we look after TikTok?" I got probably like 2,000 followers overnight from that. And that was, that's a somewhat small amount. But that was just very random and unexpected. And then another thing that happened this year was when I started randomly posting about my plotting experience because I was going through the process of plotting my next book. And I was thinking to myself, that is something that people do really struggle with. And I get quite a few questions every single day of people going, how do I plot? How do I start? I've got an idea. What do I do with that? And so I just
Mm.
went through my process of, okay, I sit down and I do a brain dump on the first day that I have this idea and I just put everything on the paper. The next day I might go and make a Pinterest board. And that surprisingly went viral. Everyone was loving my Plot Your Book series and I was getting messages every day about it. I had so many people come to me and just say, thank you so much. I actually feel like I can tackle writing my book now. And I really never expected that because it was very, me brain dumping my thoughts on how I go through this process. And it did definitely sort of have me realize that a lot of people out there want to write a book and they just don't
Mm.
know how to, and they don't have the confidence to do that. And so I think I started to make my content angle that way and really just focus on helping people through those questions that I would have had when I started writing all those years ago. And I think like that was a bit of a random detour for my content that sort of helped me grow. And I was not expecting that.
Yeah, and I mean, lovely that you can help others grow, but also that sort of benefit of an actual community as well, where I'm sure when we're sort of creating content to put out there, that's very an alone thing to do. But then knowing
Yeah.
that it does generate, that, there are people behind those followers, in most
Yeah.
cases, unless they're bots. Which is
Yeah. 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 I think as a writer, it is a very lonely journey. And so having a bit of a community out there can be really nice and, have people who are going through that journey with you and are supporting you in your journey as a writer, but you're also supporting them in another way. Like that's really cool. And it just makes the whole process seem less lonely.
Yeah, yeah. And I also wanted to ask you because I know we've chatted about this before, but uh, I took the step of creating these sort of profiles across, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and you gave some really good advice, and I'd love to hear it again, because I also need that boost again of confidence. But that different platforms, you might have higher chances of growing followers on different platforms, and yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about why you think that is and which ones to invest our time in.
So, I mean, I will say it does change all the time. And even just on my time on social media, I think it's changed again. But my take of it is that TikTok is very much for going viral. It's for putting information out there. And sort of like I said, you never know what is going to work and what doesn't work. But people just want to show up and see authentic content that's quick, it's easy to digest. And quite often it's like bite-sized pieces, a couple minutes, maybe even less. So I think for me at the moment, I'm going through a bit of a love-hate relationship with Instagram and probably even TikTok. I'm trying to figure out how you can cross-post and how to get my TikTok posts doing well on Instagram, because to be honest, they actually don't. I am not
Mm.
seeing any success on my Instagram platform at the moment. So the way that I kind of look at it is, though, TikTok is for growing that community. You have way more chance of going viral and way more chance of seeing success happen in a lot quicker of a time frame. And I think that's because people do want like a bite-sized bit of information. They like just scrolling. And you really have less time to sort of be taken seriously. So you have to have hooks. You have to be really quick on your feet. Whereas on Instagram, I do think you can build more of a curated look at your profile and at, what you do. So you can do a lot more detailed posts through carousels. You can also show up on stories, and it could be very similar to TikTok, where you show up authentically and you just talk to your phone like you're talking to a best friend over coffee. But you do have more of a chance of putting more information out there through things like carousels. And I've found personally that my carousels are received better on Instagram as opposed to Reels. But it's changing all the time. And honestly, right now I'm I'm going through, a bit of a what is Instagram for? What's the point of Instagram? I do definitely think it's worth having both, because they do attract different audiences. And I'm also starting a YouTube soon. So I do think it's really good for the long form content, but I also think YouTube shorts are becoming a really big thing. And I'm noticing a lot of success through reposting my TikTok posts on YouTube shorts. So that's something that I do think is going to keep growing as well.
Nice. And that's, yeah, where you can cross pollinate with the same content. Because hearing you talk now, I feel like it could be a full-time job in itself. And I mean, for a lot of influencers, it is, right? Creating content and putting it out
Yeah.
there. How do you manage, your platforms with writing, which is, I guess, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, what it's all about?
Yeah, it's tricky. It is really tricky, and I'm very blessed to work for myself. So I suppose I don't have to worry too much about, fitting it in around a full-time job. And I don't know how people manage to do that, because that would just destroy me, I think, in terms of time. I find that quite often while I am working, I will have my tripod set up, or I'll even just have my phone set up and just film lots of little B-roll clips while I'm doing that. And
Mm.
it still requires a fair bit of work. You have to get up and move the tripod around to get all the different angles, and you've got to make sure the lighting is good. But I do think quite often what I will do, if I'm sort of, having a week where I'm just not feeling it, or I'm really locked in on a scene that I'm trying to write or an edit that I'm trying to do for a client, I will often just batch my content. So I'll just do a couple hours in the morning on a Monday or something like that, and I'll have some ideas written out, or I will literally just stand in front of my bookshelves or at the desk and sort of fake write, and just get lots and lots of B-roll clips. And then later on, I'll put that together with sound and, captions and things like that. So I do think, there's two different ways that you can do it, but batching your content is probably the easiest, in the sense that then you have maybe hundreds of clips on your phone that you can then use later on and just put together either when you're feeling inspired, or, sit down the next week and have a batched, putting it together kind of day.
I love that idea. And then you can compartmentalize it. And so you're not trying to constantly do everything all at once.
Yeah. I think it's
Um,
important as well to really go with your energy, because
mm,
I know that sounds a bit
yeah.
crazy, but there are days where I do not want to film. And particularly if I'm writing a heavy scene or something like that, I don't want to be putting my phone down and then worrying about angles. So, if I'm having a good writing day, I will try and film some content. Or if I'm having a good day where I'm feeling, really, really good looking and really just like fun and I'm energetic, then that's the day that I'm going to want to film, because, later that week I might not want to film. And, you don't have to, you shouldn't have to, because at the end of the day, it's more about the writing than the filming.
And you mentioned writing a heavy scene. I would love to ask you, what is sad romance?
So my genre of sad romance, basically means that I don't believe in happy endings.
And
Um,
I am a rom-com writer, so I'm like, this does not make sense to me. I want to hear more though.
I know. I don't know where this comes from because I love reading rom-coms. And to be fair, I think I will eventually write rom-coms as well. But to me, I just think there's something so beautiful in the pain that comes from a sad ending. And I know this sounds
Mm,
really morbid, but to me, like isn't a happy ending. Everyone dies. And, the reality of life is that people do go through heartbreak, whatever that looks like. And so I think capturing that in a beautiful story just feels so moving to me. And, a lot of my books have, illness themes or unfortunately dying themes, or
yeah.
themes where you're just struggling with something along the journey, which I know is, most books, but I think you can still have a beautiful story and still have a love story that doesn't necessarily end the way that everyone wants it to end. And it can still be a good book. It can still be enjoyable. And there's sometimes something beautiful in that sadness as well. Like I always walk away feeling humbled, but a little bit more like, "Oh, okay, that's just life," when I read a book like that.
Yeah, no, okay. I changed my mind. That does make sense.
Yeah.
But I think, when I think about Romeo and Juliet and its longevity because of its ending, I think a lot of people would argue, right? So, and I
Yeah.
think as long as, I like the term sad romance for the genre because you're setting the reader's expectation from the beginning. If you gave someone a rom-com and it didn't end up in a happily ever after, then the reader wouldn't, would feel jibbed. Whereas I think sad
Yeah.
romance sets that up perfectly. So you need some tissues at some point, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I even think of things like The Notebook as well. I would probably put that in the category of sad romance, even though it's a beautiful love story that spans, years and years and years. They don't survive in the end. If spoiler alert if you haven't seen or read The Notebook, but it's still that sad, like heartthrob that you feel throughout the book or in the movie, where they're not together for the whole time. And so I think that's where it can kind of be received as maybe a rom-com in some elements because there are some, maybe not The Notebook, there's not really funny bits in that, but even just
Less
like
comedy,
Romeo
more
and Juliet.
romance, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be, "Oh, she's young and she dies," or something like that. Like, it could be over the span of a lifetime, and to me, that's still that beautiful, sort of happy, sad ending of a life spent together, but with a lot of pain as well.
And actually, that makes me think about querying agents as well, because as we mentioned, you've just been successful in having enough of representation and signing for a genre like sad romance. How did you go about thinking about including comp titles in your query letter?
Yeah, it was actually really difficult because I do think that sad romance has had its day, and I'm hoping it's going to come back. I think things like One Day, it's a really great example because as a book, it was actually published quite a while ago. Like I remember reading that when I was a teenager. And so that would technically not really be able to be used as a comp title because they want to see, well, as far as I know, they want to
Yes.
see, newer books and things that have been published recently. And so I did actually utilize things like Netflix and the popular One Day series as a comp title because I think a lot of the readers of those genres are still consuming other content, and that's okay to be used as comp titles. So, what's popular on Netflix? What is trending on TikTok? I used all of that in my query letters because that's the reality of where my readership is living. And so
Hmm.
I think it's tricky because I think sad romance was really popular back when John Green was really popular and books like that and all those movies were coming out, and so they're slowly trickling back in through things like Netflix, but not necessarily as much in fiction. And so I'm sort of trying to bridge that gap and bring it all back. And I really did say that in my query letter. Like, I would love for it to come back in fiction and have a revival of those sorts of books that were so popular when I was a teenager or early 20s. And I loved reading and consuming. But it did make finding my comp titles really difficult because there's not a lot in the recent years that were really sad and sort of fit the bill. And so I really had to go digging and reading and researching to find some things that fit that.
And I guess as well, it's sort of, I mean, I think when those books were coming out, they might have been pitched as drama or like a different, like I'm wondering, yeah, is sad romance, has it always been around? Are we coining it in a different way now? Or maybe it was also called sad romance then and I just didn't know.
It's always been around. I would say like romantic dramas is probably what they used to be called, or just romance. Like maybe back in the day, I think John Green and Nicholas Sparks were all sort of just romance or YA or things like that. I do think nowadays it is really important to be more specific. Like things like romantasy is its own genre now, and it
Mm.
honestly that's the whole reason I think book talk exists. And so I do think it's important to be more specific, so you're not just saying, oh, I'm writing a romance book, because that would change the way that your query letter is written and the comp titles that you're using. I'm honestly not sure where I got sad romance from. I think I didn't want to call my first book like a medical romance or like a you can't really put like death in the title or anything like that. And I'm not saying that any characters in my book die, but I think a sad romance just sort of fits the bill, and it could be a happy ending. It could not be a happy ending. You don't really know what's going to happen, but you know you're going to feel something while you're reading it. And, don't get me wrong, there's definitely comedy in my book. I think I try and offset the sad parts with a lot of happy parts as well. But I don't think, like you said, you could pitch it as a rom-com because people would be maybe a little bit disappointed by the time they got to the end of it.
Talking about other things that are important in a query letter, we've talked about comp titles. There's also an author's bio. And I'd love to talk about your writing and your education, but also how important did you think or did you include your social media platform and how important do you think that is?
Yeah, so I included everything. I do really see the publishing industry as a sales industry, and that might be really interesting because it's so creative and it really comes down to the ability for someone to write a book and write a book that people want to read. But to me, it is a sales game. So you need to sell the author as this package that can maybe continue to write books and build a career across multiple books or multiple series and things like that. So for me, I definitely put in a lot of information about my social platforms and my degree. And I am very lucky that I have a master's in creative writing, editing, and publishing. I do think that that helped in the sense that I I can create a manuscript that is probably cleaner than the average person. I am an editor, so I do edit books for a living, and I think being able to apply the same structural edits and line edits to my own book definitely gives me an upper hand. In saying that, I don't think that that is the reason that I have landed an agent or the reason that my books are going to hopefully sell and do really well. But I do think it's important to put any experience that you have in a query letter, because they need to know what you're like as a person and whether you have the ability to write multiple books or whether you have a big social media following, because all of that can really help sell you as a package that will hopefully be able to find a following and find sales through different mediums, being TikTok or YouTube or whatever it is. And so for myself, I highlighted the fact that I had my degree, that I have a community. I didn't put it as followers. I put it as a writing community, and I help writers every day through whatever means that is, my services or just blog posts or posts on TikTok. But also that I work for a writers festival as well as a contractor, and I connect with writers there, and that's thousands of writers and thousands of people into the industry and people who love just talking about books. And so I think all of that has really helped me because it sort of just sells this package of, yeah, I'm here and I want to do things with writing, and I'm also willing to put myself out there as well.
I love that, and that makes sense, and I like what you said about it's sort of bundling you up as the package as well, and sort of like
Yeah.
what you're giving that sort of, um, holistic view for literary agents as they read you, and then, as you said, it is a sales game for better or worse at the end of the day, but your agent then has to sell you to publishers, so it's yeah, you wanna give them all the ammunition that they might need in order to help them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely think, like, it's not necessary. You absolutely don't need to freak out and go, "I don't have a following," or "I don't have any experience or degrees." But I think, even utilizing, a marketing degree or a degree in whatever it is, you can say that and sort of tell them your experience. And I think anything can help. You do want to sell yourself as a package and sort of convince people that you can write multiple books and have a career as a writer. Obviously, it's okay to write one book as well, but most people that I know would love to just be writers forever. And so being able to sell yourself as that, I think, is the biggest thing.
And I do wanna talk about your undergrad and your master's degree, because I think many writers debate the value of whether to invest in doing a degree versus a course, in pursuing their writing passion. Do you think your degrees have helped you navigate the real world of publishing? And would you recommend it, or is there anything that they haven't prepared you for?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Because there's such a mindset around as a writer or as an arts person, you're never going to make it. I think for sure it has helped me with the f- the polishing of my book. I think things like writing a query letter and understanding comp titles and pitching an agent, all of that definitely came from the knowledge that I had from my master's degree. In terms of writing, I would say I really did not learn the tools that I needed to write a book. Most degrees sort of cover the ability to write short form content, which is excellent and can lead people towards book deals and happens all the time. But I think doing my own research and really studying on my own the structure of a novel or the the how to write a good character and how to have that character arc, really seamless and really flow throughout the story. I think all of that I learned, and really that is the foundation of most books, that came from my own research. So I loved my degrees and I think that really, really helped me, but I would definitely say that it's not necessary for people to have. Um, and that, courses might do a great job. I haven't really done too many courses, but honestly, YouTube, Google, research, all of that can teach you just as much as a degree can these days in creative writing.
And would you say was there any sort of resource that you found online that you absolutely loved the most, or it's sort of you you absorb a lot of content and you pick up little pieces as you go?
This book was my lifesaver. It honestly taught me so much about writing a book. Um,
I
I
have
think,
that
yeah,
somewhere here as well, yeah.
honestly, I think when I read that book, everything just clicked into place, and I just said to myself, like, "Oh, okay, it's all about structure. It's all about character arcs." And once I sort of realized that, I realized how easy it was for myself. Obviously,
Mm.
writing a book is not easy, but something just clicked into place for me, and writing a novel became easier because of that.
In my journey through writing, and I've done many courses and I've done read many books, and so what I sometimes get nervous about is accepting the wrong advice as gospel. And so how do you sort of navigate that? Like, I'd love to provide people a shortcut. I obviously Save the Cat is one I love too.
Yeah, look, it's really scary because I do often see advice out there that I would definitely wary people against. I will say, though, I do think everyone's journey is different and there's probably no wrong advice. You do see, for an example, people who say that you need to write 1,000 words a day to be successful and finish a book. Or there's people who will say that you just need to sit down and write whenever you can write, and that's how you'll write a book. And people are, really like strict on their rules around things like that. And that's just one example of a million that I can think of for both editing and writing. I think just really trusting your gut and what
Mm.
you get out of it and what you feel is right, because everyone's journey is different. That's the joy of writing a book. Like, you have an idea and you're putting this world onto paper, and everyone will go through a different experience through writing that book. And so, whatever works for you and what you feel confident doing is probably the most important thing. But also, don't be afraid to get a second opinion. Like, if you think that you have a contract, this is another thing that I see all the time. You've been contacted by a publishing house or an agent, and they're asking you to pay for your book to be published.
Mm.
That's a red flag for me. So I think reaching out to people like myself, I have open DMs. I'm always willing to answer questions, even if it's, just a quick yes or no. Um, don't be afraid to get that second opinion if you think it's too good to be true, or if you're just not feeling comfortable with it, because at the end of the day, people out there do take advantage of people who have a dream and just want to have their book published. And so not falling into those traps is a really big thing. And just, yeah, don't always jump at the first opportunity or experience. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think it makes total sense. And, you know, it's really nice to hear from people like you who are like, yes, DM me and you can ask. And so, because I think sometimes I hear a lot, everyone is always grateful for their community. Everyone always recommends finding their writing community. But I think that is just another thing as well that can take time and to build trust. So it's nice to hear that you can, there are people out there that you can go, okay, this person looks legit. I'm just going to
Yeah.
go and ask them and compare the advice I'm getting over here. And people are that there's that open door.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, quite often I've got a lot of friends who work within the publishing industry, and that's from my experience through my degrees and, just what I've sort of done since university. And so I even asked them questions. The other day I was sitting with my friend and talking about the book sales and, what's been doing well recently. And obviously that's an insight that I have that a lot of people don't. But I think I bring all of these different experiences and all this different knowledge that I have from my life in writing and in, the editing space. And I'm more than happy to help pass that on to people, because at the end of the day, I'm no different to the person next to me who just has a dream of wanting to publish a book. And I think whatever I can do to help people do that's just like what brings me so much joy and why I do what I do.
Okay, let's move to the rapid fire question section. The ultimate sad romance trope, miscommunication, star-crossed lovers, or right person, wrong time.
Right person, wrong time.
What is your writing fuel, as in coffee, tea, wine?
Ooh, I always have coffee, water, and usually a protein shake on my desk at the same time.
Nice. With creatine as well. That's I feel like everyone's getting into
No,
creatine.
but probably soon.
Do you listen to music while writing? And if so, what does your playlist contain?
Yeah, I listen to a specific playlist that I've created for the book that I'm writing at that time. And I hate words in my music. I can't concentrate, so it's always sad music, like film tracks. I listen to a lot of piano kind of music. But honestly, it's all random and probably from people you've never heard of. It's just something that I put together, and yeah, I kind of like to get in the feels of my book while I'm writing them.
Okay, so this podcast is called The Rewrite. If you could go back and rewrite one thing you thought you knew about becoming an author early on, knowing what you know now, what would it be?
So, so interesting. I think about this all the time. I think becoming a plotter instead of a, no, I think becoming a plotter instead of a pantser, Because my first book I wrote over like 3 years and it was just garbage. My second book, again, I wrote it and I had so much inspiration for it, but I had nothing planned for it. And to be honest, I don't even know my main character's name. I think it changed like 6 times while writing it. And then finally, when writing my recent novel, the one that I have the agent for now, I actually plotted my book and it was so much easier. And between drafts, I had way more direction because I kind of had answered a lot of the big questions that I needed to answer that without plotting, I would have still been questioning. So I definitely think becoming a plotter and plotting my book out.
It's a great answer. What are you reading now?
I am reading Miranda Darling's Thunderhead, and I'm also reading the second Will of the Many book, which I think is called The Strength of the Few. So at all times, I have at least 1 or 2 books on the go.
And do you have them on the go on Kindle, paper book, Audible?
Audible is my main form of reading. I'm one of those people who have my book on 2.5 speed and I'm just listening to it all the time. But I am reading Miranda Darling's.
2.5 is fast. That's impressive.
It's really fast. Yeah. I've built it up over time, but I love it. Like that's how my brain works. So just having words just, screaming at me all the time, it's just better. But I am reading Miranda Darling's book, by paperback as well. So generally I'll try and read a paperback, for 15 minutes or so before bed, and Audible for anything else.
Awesome. And maybe the last one, if you could adapt any book that you love into a TV or a movie, what would it be?
Oh, well, you know what? My answer would have been Wuthering Heights, and that just happened. So I feel like I've had my dreams come true, because I have like shelves of Wuthering Heights books here. I'm obsessed with
Wow.
it. It's my favorite book of all time because it's a sad romance book, it's not
Yes.
happy. So yeah, I feel like my answer has already come true this year.
Oh, nice. And on Valentine's Day as well, right? It came out.
I know. Yeah, I was at the cinemas.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Abby. I've really appreciated talking with you, and yeah, thank you for being on the rewrite.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great time. I loved it.